Australia's space program.
Commonwealth, the former empire, now Commonwealth. Is it relevant? Probably not. But why not give this part a shot? Stay tuned. Here comes Uncommonwealth, the podcast.
And we are live from the Uncommonwealth Podcast Pandemia Studios. I'm here very cordially with Jimmy HVD, Katherine Rollinson, and the inimitable Adam Mueller, everybody.
Hey,
take it away, guys.
Hey. We used to have a segment called Sports Heroes Head to Head. I've changed the name to be more inclusive. Now it's called Legends Head to Head.
Very wise.
So it could be... So we're going to pit two people against each other doing something that they wouldn't normally do. Contestant 1, Prince Charles, born in 1948. He's 71 years old and 5 foot 10 inches tall, which is probably not true because no one's actually 5'10".
Nah, he wouldn't do well in
Probably
Tinder,
means
would he?
he's 5'8", but he's been the Duke of Cornwall and the Duke of, is it Rothesay since is that how you pronounce it? Piers, I'm looking at you.
That's pretty good.
Okay, so he's been both of those since 1952. He's the oldest and longest-serving heir apparent in British history because his mom won't die.
Don't you hate that?
Real conflict of interest on that one.
But look, this is a guy who can wait out a global pandemic. So Prince Charles versus contestant 2, Jacinda Kate Laurel, the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Jacinda.
Yeah, so she's 39 years old and 5 foot 5 inches tall. And you may be wondering why I'm giving you heights. It will become, there's a reason.
Did you ever think you'd live in a timeline where everything we do is compared to New Zealand?
That's a good point. Other than like Middle Earth.
I thought that was the last we saw of them.
They've got no active cases. They were partying in the streets just the other day.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Just to rub it in.
So Prince Charles against, is it Jimmy? How do you pronounce it? Jacinda Laurel at event 1, jousting.
Oh. I'm going immediately with Jacinta. She's got the age. She's got that compact load of the horse saddle frame.
Right. And plus, growing up in Middle Earth, I'm sure she's got experience in swordsmanship.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't have orcs in your in your township and not have gotten a duel or two.
But don't they train royals in how to joust?
Good point.
I don't know.
Medieval, useless.
Yes. Yeah, it's the only thing.
Pretty sure Charles has been rocking a sword on the hip for the past few decades, right?
He's got a glove ready
like he could
to
be
smack
sneaky
you.
athletic.
He's so old, people might have been dueling when he was younger. They had the guillotine up until 1985. So
in England?
It was the last time it was used in France.
In France, right. But don't British, isn't high society, fencing is a sport in high society, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he's been a sleeper on the fencing scene last while.
And they all play polo, don't they? So they all have that horse riding while doing something else, which has to be hard.
What's the difference between jousting and fencing?
You're on a horse when you joust, and they ride at each other.
Wait, are we talking about jousting or fencing?
Jousting.
Oh, okay. I got completely confused then.
When I said jousting, that confused you?
Yeah, I thought sword fighting.
I didn't know what jousting was. That it was
like
you ride at each other on horses.
Like Heath Ledger in a Knight's Tale.
And literally like a Knight's Tale.
Well, this changes everything.
It does change everything because Prince Charles also, I feel like, if he knows how to do anything, it's ride a horse. That would be maybe the only sport he can do.
The more you spoke, the only thing she has is her size. She's got a small impact area.
Harder to hit, small target.
I mean, do you ride horses in New Zealand? Is that how they go to the store and stuff?
Oh, they go to the liquor store.
That's Australia.
I feel like we've got to give it to Prince Charles then, because he's been riding horses all his life.
Agreed. We just needed to understand what jousting was.
I don't know why we were talking about swords.
I forget. I should have learned from the shuffleboard incident that I need to be very clear about what the event is. Okay, there's one more event that we want to pit them against each other at. Event 2, negotiating peace in the Middle East.
Easily, Jacinta.
Explain.
I think I spoke about this previously, but if you haven't seen it, there's a very endearing clip of her explaining coronavirus to kids.
So are you saying Israelis and Palestinians are like kids?
You putting words in my mouth.
That's what I
Adam.
heard, Adam.
I want you
And
to
that
take
they
that out of
like having
post.
things explained to them by women.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a complicated one, isn't it? Yeah. There's a lot of moving pieces in this one.
That's true. That kind of rules
Sure.
her out.
That's the deciding factor. A woman.
Right.
I'm going to go with Prince Charles, just by default.
By default,
We
being
did-
because he's a man? Is that what you is that the default?
Basically.
Because legally he could drive to the negotiation.
Uncommon wealth.
I like to do a little history lesson because who better to teach history than someone who doesn't know any history? I like to pick an uncommon.
An uncommonwealth country? Is that what you were going to say? That works.
I was going to say, I like to pick an uncommonwealth country. And I did. Bangladesh.
That's
It's
where the
crazy.
tigers come from, isn't it? The Bengal tigers?
Yes, and that's their national animal. I don't know what you guys know about Bangladesh, but I learn a lot when I do this research. I've got to say. Including where it is. So, but Bangladesh, here's some fun facts. It's the 8th most populous country, but 92nd in landmass. So it's actually one of the most densely populated areas in the world.
wow.
We've been talking about that. So it has a population of 161 million in what I worked out to be the equivalent of the size of Michigan.
Yeah, check your math on that there, Captain. I'm just
Look, if
kidding.
it doesn't involve Regan, I think I double checked all these facts this time. I didn't want to look as stupid. People have been there for a long time, since the Stone Age, for over like 20,000 years. It's always like crazy, like researching countries that aren't just like North America, where it's just it's a long, long history. It has 2 awesome natural world records. So Bangladesh has the longest natural sandy beach, which is
Oh.
cool. And also the world's largest mangrove forest, it's called the Sundarbans. It's a type of forest that I don't understand. Jimmy, I thought maybe you could look into it further.
Also, I don't know if this is a Canadian pronunciation, the way you said mangrove instead of mangrove, but I'm like, bit sexist there. What about the woman grove? Where's the damn patriarchy in the mangrove? I'm also glad that you said sandy beaches, because coming from Australia, where like every beach is sand, it's such a weird thing seeing European beaches, Piers, where they're just
Oh, the
rocks and
rocks?
pebbles. You're like, what
With
the fuck
rocks?
is that?
Oh my god.
Who would want to go and sit on rocks
Yeah, it's
near
not
a
a
beach?
beach.
Yeah.
Australia must have huge sandy natural beaches, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm a little bit jealous, knowing now that Bangladesh has the largest
the
sandy
longest.
beach. Do you know how long it is, Catherine?
I don't. You're going to go home and measure Australia's?
How many of those people live in the capital? Is it even more densely populated into a few
You
different
can't
cities?
ask me random questions about Bangladesh and expect me to know the
Piers, I'm sensing that this is a segment where we listen and then say, ooh, and
Ooh.
ah, but don't ask any follow-up.
That's a great name for the segment, Jimmy.
The ooh and ah segment?
Well, look, it's a country with a rich history. I can't cover it all. I dug into a little bit of history that I found pretty interesting. So in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries, it was ruled by a sovereign power and it called the Sultanate of Bengal. That it was several different sultans, like it wasn't one person, obviously, for 2 centuries. And it was known as the richest country to trade with by Europeans. And they had a ton of like resources, and visitors wrote about how it seemed like it was just a very well-off country. A couple of cool tidbits from that time. They had war elephants. They were a big part of the Bengal army. I thought maybe, Jimmy, you could like tell us more one day about war elephants.
I don't know if this was in Bangladesh, but they used to do, this is pretty gruesome, but it used to be a method of execution was crushing by elephant.
Oh,
like
God.
They would,
Brutal.
pretty
Well,
effed up.
We had pulled apart by horses in England. That was a good one.
Another cool
Oh.
thing is that silver coins for currency, but for smaller purchases, they use shells, which was the shell currency was a prominent currency for several centuries. So one silver coin was worth 10,250 cowrie shells. So the Bengal Sultanate relied on shiploads of these tiny shells coming from the Maldives, which I thought,
Hey, the Maldives.
Oh my god.
the Maldives,
Carmen.
another uncommon wealth country.
But how inconvenient is that if you got to bring your silver coin, you're like, shit, I've got to lug around 10,000
The cowrie
shells.
shell it's what we call like the puka shell. Those awful necklaces that awful people wear.
That's pretty cool that you can hold your money up to your ear and hear the ocean.
There's so much more. The borders of what is now Bangladesh was established not until 1947. So when I'm talking about like Bengal, it's actually a much smaller region than what is now Bangladesh. And then eventually, Bangladesh wasn't liberated until 1971. And now it has one of the fastest GDP growth rates. So it's growing, big economy. 160 people. You guys, I need some oohs and ahs.
Ooh, 160 people. I'm being very quiet because you never know what the British did over there. So I was waiting for you to finish.
That's a good point.
I always thought something horrible was going to come up that we were responsible.
Piers is like, I think I left the kettle on. Just going to check. Catherine, that's very interesting. I'm so impressed by all this. And I think as long as we don't ask you any tough questions, you you genuinely sound like an expert.
How many shells was it again?
How many shells can a seashell?
And they're like tiny, but the pieces of these shells also had value. So people would trade the pieces as well.
Wow, it's like Bitcoin.
Exactly like Bitcoin.
The podcast.
Okay, friends, I have a fun news story for you guys. This is from a fair while ago, but I only recently read this fun little article. This is a local park in Western Australia issued NASA a $400 littering ticket when one of their space stations, upon re-entry, split apart and part of the debris landed in this park in Western Australia.
Why?
Yeah.
Was this the SpaceX one like 2 weeks ago?
No, this is a while ago. This is like in the late 70s.
Oh, so is this breaking news segment?
But this is in the middle of this is like rural Western Australia, so this news has actually only just reacted like populated areas of the rest of the country.
They just got that roadblock cleared.
Yeah.
With the 400-mile detour.
The detour that added 4 days. But so basically, this is I think it was NASA's first space station called Skylab that they launched in like the early 1970s. So it was orbiting the Earth for like almost a decade or whatever. And then upon re-entry, I didn't realize this, the plan usually is, unless it's a manned shuttle or something, back in the day, a lot of spacecrafts, they would just like, it's going to disintegrate upon re-entry. That's like the plan of what to do with it. And then there's like a bit of debris or whatever, but they target it so it lands in the ocean or whatever. So part of this, upon re-entry, most of it all burned up, but part of the debris scattered across the ocean, but some of it scattered throughout all this like deserted area of Western Australia. And as I said, like for people who like aren't from Australia, like we can't understate how massive and deserted the middle of Australia is. It's just all a desert. So NASA was like, no worries. It's just going to fall to the desert. There's no risk of anyone being hurt. Maybe
NASA no worries policy.
Yeah.
It was the 70s, man.
You know NASA, they're pretty chill. There's like a kangaroo who's going to be like, what the fuck is this, rocket ship? So all the debris landed and NASA went as part of their post-space re-entry thing. They went to just like check everything's okay. So when they turned up to rural Western Australia, the local like national park, I don't know, what do you call a group of park rangers? Whatever they're called. These park rangers, they're like
the gaggle of park rangers.
So when all these NASA guys turned up, these Australian park rangers are like, fellas, this is littering in a national park. $400 ticket.
Oh, they got ticketed.
And they collected?
No, it was a bit of a joke, obviously, and NASA were like, haha, very funny, very funny. But it's been sitting there on the books ever since it was 1979 this happened. And then I think this is a few years ago, it got news headlines again because some radio DJ in California found out about it and did like a charity drive for his listeners, and they like raised the funds to pay off the debt.
Adjusted for inflation?
No, they just paid $400.
Australia or US?
Well, they paid in seashells.
It was about 600 seashells.
What's the dollar to seashell?
I think we need Catherine's new segment can be foreign currency exchange of seashells.
Is that Australia's one contribution to the space race, or like?
Catherine, that's quite hurtful, you know.
I'm not looking.
What has Canada done for the space race?
New Zealand,
Canada's done a lot.
Have they?
The space arm was Canadian. That was a big deal.
What do you mean?
They used to send up the They had this thing like in the space shuttles where they'd open up like the bay of the space shuttle and had this cool robotic arm that could like repair satellites and stuff. And that was Canadian.
No
It was a
way.
big deal.
What is that?
They do
what is it?
have the social media star of the Canadians, the NASA guy, Chris Hadfield. He did the
Oh,
David
that's
Bowie
right.
song. Chris Hadfield. He's
Hadfield,
probably
I
the most
yeah.
famous astronaut in the
Yeah.
world right now. He's got a master class, so advantage.
Oh, he does
for
it a
him.
mass. Yeah. How many Australians have space
What did-
master classes,
When
Jimmy?
did he-
Okay, well,
when did
you
he
might have
teach
me
on
there.
the
You might have me there.
masterclass?
Oh, how to be an astronaut. You take the master
Oh.
class, you can go to space.
Uncommon Wealth.
Hello, everybody. We are going over to the British Isles, and we are going to check in Scotland and see what they're up to. They've got a couple of
Ooh.
wee laws that are a bit weird. All right.
That's
Ooh,
such a
cool.
good accent.
Very strange laws. Two of them are actually still enforced, and one of them was just abolished in 2013. You'll see why in a second. The first one is known as the Cludgy Caller. I think I'm saying that correctly. The Cludgy Caller law. It states that if a stranger knocks on your door and asks to use your loo, which is your toilet, you are legally obliged to let them.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
in America, I believe that's called the Starbucks law.
Quite controversial.
It harks back to the days when travelers would sort of walk through different sort of clan territories. So they had to have this sort of amnesty if you needed a wee, so you could sort of stop in at any hut along the way. And
But to be
Ask
clear,
you,
like they
like-
don't have to let you in if it's a number two.
yes,
Number
taking
two,
the-
keep on walking.
Yeah,
Is that
oh,
true?
maybe that's where the phrase "taking the piss" comes from. If you knocked on someone's door to use the loo to have a wee,
So what if
Does does it too? Oh,
Right.
That's evil.
I mean, even in modern day, that's terrible.
oh, you're not a good friend if you're stopping by someone's house just to do a number two. That's clans fought over less.
I
Piers,
stop by Jimmy's every time I'm in the East Village to take a dump. I don't know.
yeah, I
about
know. That's why I've stopped letting Adam in my apartment. He kills me up at you home, and I say
Oh,
no.
but in Scotland, still talking about Scotland, it is illegal for a boy under the age of 10 to see a naked mannequin. This is an arcane but amusing derivative of laws preventing the corruption of youth.
But if you're 11, it's totally fine.
If you're 11, you can go to town.
You're good. Okay.
I'm so scarred by the Two Truths Lie segments that I'm just like, is this true? But like, I can't get that out of my head. But you're just saying true things, right? You're not fooling us. Like,
No, these are true.
Adam,
This
okay.
is not this is not a setup.
But mannequins are not anatomically correct these days, right? Aren't they giant Ken dolls?
I mean, they're
I
all very smooth now, aren't they?
Well,
But I
except
mean-
I think mannequins are very inaccurate because they all have so much pubic hair.
I mean,
Totally
the Scottish
not
ones.
I don't think mannequins even show that area of male mannequins.
That's what I mean. You know what? That would actually be weirder. Forget
Well, no,
the
no,
kids
just
seeing it.
any
I would be scarred if I saw
Female
a mannequin
mannequins,
with a giant penis.
Like a realistic penis
Right.
for a
right.
mannequin. Like,
Wow.
why is that necessary for wearing clothes or demonstrating?
We got a bloody
Well, it's like
statue
when you
of
see a
David
statue of
over
a
here.
when you see a statue of a
Yeah.
horse and it's
I-
got like a huge cock. It's like, is
Yeah.
that necessary?
I feel like the sculptors are showing off at this point. Like, look what I can do.
And the third and final one, wrapping it all up, is that from Monday to Saturday, this was abolished in 2013, so it's no longer a law. But from Monday to Saturday, within the medieval walls of the city of York, it is legal to murder a Scotsman, but only if he's carrying a bow and arrow.
That seems
So
totally reasonable.
if you
Yeah,
ran
I'm
into a Scottish guy up until
honestly upset they changed that
2013 with a bow and arrow in the city of York, which is rather large, it's not the size of any Bangladeshi cities, but it if he was carrying a bow and arrow, you could legally murder him.
I do feel like that's a law where you could go one of two ways. Like either you got to get rid of it or you just have to extend it to all of England. It can't just be York.
I love it. They'd extend it to all of England and then start handing out bow and arrows.
Exactly. They'd just be leaving them around to entrap
Right,
them.
right.
Who's walking around with a bow and arrow these days?
Well, that's the problem. You got all these Englishmen wanting to get feisty with the Scotsmen, but they're stuck because all the Scotsmen have rifles
English
now.
version of a Civil War reenactor.
Did anyone ever take advantage of the law and kill someone and then get away with it? Can you imagine the scandal?
I can imagine knowing the answer to that question, and I imagine it would be
Isn't that why Gerard Butler's not in movies anymore? He got murdered in carrying a bow and arrow.
I think it had more to
He
do with
was
his
practicing for a new Robin Hood movie, and they took
He's the
him
only
out.
Scotsman I could think of. That's the only reason.
I mean, he'd be.
It's like I was just filming a movie, but it was still a bow and arrow, and you were still in York.
Yeah, but I feel like Gerard Butler wouldn't go down that easily. We've all seen him in 300.
Oh.
It did take an entire Persian horde to bring him down, not a lone rogue
Is it
Englishman.
Persian whore?
Horde.
Oh, okay.
Like the Empire, we're almost done. We hope that you've had lots of fun. Was it relevant? Probably not. But thanks for giving this part a shot. Stay tuned for the end of Uncommon Wealth, the podcast. Stay tuned for Uncommon Takes.
We split jousting and negotiating peace in the Middle East.
Once we finally worked out what jousting was.
Do you have to be on a horse to negotiate peace in the Middle East?
I mean, it can't hurt.
Maybe a camel.
The podcast.
So if you had one silver coin, Dan, you are killing it.
Yeah, that was
Rich
like
person.
a big. I don't know what the equivalent would be, but I don't think a silver coin would be broken down into that many units if it didn't have
No.
quite a bit of value.
This is when we grill you about medieval currency.
Uncommon Wealth.
What's Jet Li up to these days?
Why wasn't that the segment? No, I'm just kidding.
Check in with Jet Li.
Yeah, the where are the Commonwealth? Where are they
Right,
now?
where are they now? Yeah.
The podcast.
Made up.
Don't worry. You sound like you have a New Zealand accent to me. So.
That's an even worse thing to say to me. Why would you say that?
Uncommon Wealth.
I have
Quick
to
break. Wanna
pee
make a
really
coffee?
quick. Yeah.
Oh, you have to pee?
And
Oh, yeah, let's get that on.
There we
the
go. That's the end of the episode.
shit!
You came first.
Gotta go pee.
Every time!
The podcast.